Are you standing next to a ticking economic time bomb without even knowing it? Next time you find yourself near a busy port or driving past a freight train, take a second to look at those massive rows of steel shipping containers stacked high, into the sky. They are the absolute backbone of our modern world, the heavy metal blocks that literally carry your entire life inside them, from the smartphone sitting in your pocket right now to the clothes you wore out of the house this morning. Without these boxes, global trade grindingly halts in less than a week. But if you were to actually walk up to the heavy steel doors of any single one of the 25 million containers currently circulating the globe, you would find a tiny, unassuming metal identification plate stamped near the latch. Look closely at the fine print on that plate, because it reveals a hidden pattern that shapes our entire global economy. It honestly does not matter if the container has massive, bright corporate logos like Maersk, Costco, or Evergreen painted in giant letters across the side. Those names are just the operators. In the grand scheme of things, they are just the airlines flying the route. The real power lies in the names stamped on those tiny, easily overlooked metal plates. Those are the actual manufacturers, the absolute Boeing and Airbus of the maritime world. And if you check 1,000 containers, you will notice almost every single plate lists one of just 3 corporate giants: CIMC, Dongfeng, or CXIC. These 3 mega corporations build over 80% of the world's shipping containers. When you include the slightly smaller manufacturing players operating within those exact same borders, the data becomes downright mind-boggling. One single nation, China, currently manufactures 96% of the world's dry cargo containers, and a staggering 100% of all refrigerated ones. Every single ice-cold container moving fresh food across the ocean comes from the exact same place. This reality raises some pretty intense, uncomfortable questions. Why did economic powerhouses like the United States, Germany, or Japan completely stop making them? How did they let a total monopoly slip through their fingers? The standard explanation you always hear is that it just comes down to cheap labor or aggressive government subsidies. While those factors definitely play a massive role, they do not tell the full story. The real secret lies buried deep within a strange, almost brutal economic loop that makes it mathematically impossible for a factory anywhere else on Earth to build these steel boxes and actually survive. This is the real story of how just 3 companies completely cornered the market on the physical shape of globalization itself. Originally, these containers were built right where they were first invented, the United States. Following the massive shipping revolution in the mid-1950s and the legendary maiden voyage of the Ideal X, American factories turned out these steel boxes rapidly to back a booming new industry. But the center of gravity for manufacturing never stays still. It always migrates toward the deepest pools of industrial efficiency. By the 1960s, the entire production hub shifted over to Japan. During the 1970s and 80s, it migrated again to South Korea. And finally, by the 1990s, it landed firmly and permanently in China. It is incredibly easy to look at this historical timeline and just assume this is another basic story of Western corporations chasing low-wage workers overseas. But the math tells a completely different story, and it all starts with the raw materials. A single 40-foot shipping container is essentially 4,000 kilograms of high-grade steel and specialized components. Specifically, it requires a weather-resistant alloy designed to rust perfectly on the surface just to protect the structural integrity underneath from harsh ocean salt. Steel alone accounts for roughly 60% of the entire cost to build a shipping container. Right now, China produces more steel than the rest of the entire planet combined. Their crude steel production reaches over 1 billion tons annually, which is nearly 10 times the total output of the second largest producer on Earth, India. This single country output represents more than 53% of all global steel production, completely dwarfing the combined capabilities of the United States, Japan, and Europe. Now, imagine you want to open a competing container factory in Europe or America today. To build that box, you would most likely have to buy and import Chinese steel, pay massive shipping tariffs on that raw metal, build the incredibly heavy box locally, and then, here's the ultimate kicker, you would have to pay to ship that empty container all the way back across the ocean just so it can pick up goods because that region produces more physical stuff than the next 10 countries combined. It is a logistical nightmare that breaks down and loses money at every single step of the process. The geography of steel completely dictates the geography of the container. If you do not control the metal, you do not get to build the box. So, who exactly are the powerhouses behind this global monopoly? If you are a shipping line looking to buy containers, you do not really have options. You are dealing with just 3 major players. First, there's the undisputed titan, CIMC, China. International Maritime Containers, founded in 1980 in Shenzhen as a joint venture with a Danish firm, they have grown into an absolute industrial giant. Recently, CIMC reported massive record-breaking revenues, bringing in over $24 billion in a single year. Their dry container sales completely skyrocketed, moving nearly 3.5 million units as global trade rebounded. Statistically, if you see two shipping containers sitting side by side at any port in the world, CIMC built at least one of them, they command roughly half of the entire global market all by themselves. Then you have Dongfeng, holding down about 25 to 30% of the market. They act as the quiet giant of the industry, usually operating as the go-to builder for major state-consolidated shipping lines. Finally, there is CXIC, the third major player, locking down the remaining 10 to 15% of global production. But to really understand why they dominate, you have to look at the sheer sophistication of their operations. These are not old-school, smoky factories. They are state-of-the-art facilities. CIMC has pioneered highly automated production lines that can literally run in total darkness. They utilize advanced laser welding and automated quality control, turning heavy container manufacturing from a basic construction job into a high-precision, automotive-style assembly line. This deep state backing gives these three firms an unmatched competitive advantage, absolute stability. If a private manufacturing company in the West hits a major economic downturn, it goes bankrupt. But these giants, heavily backed by state banks, can easily keep the lights on and maintain full production capacity, even when global demand temporarily collapses. This ensures that the moment global trade picks back up, they are the only ones ready to supply the world. We saw the extreme power of this setup during recent global supply chain disruptions when container prices suddenly tripled. Some critics even accuse the manufacturers of keeping supply low to control pricing. You would think Western shipping lines would see these soaring prices and try to break the monopoly by building their own boxes. In fact, Maersk, the Danish shipping giant, tried to do exactly that for years through its own specialized manufacturing arm, MCI, which built incredibly high-quality refrigerated containers. But competing in this environment is brutal. Maersk eventually tried to sell that entire division off to CIMC. Even though international regulators ultimately stepped in and blocked the acquisition on antitrust grounds, the move sent a clear, chilling message to the entire market. The profit margins in this business are absolutely razor thin. It is a massive volume game that, right now, only the big three can afford to play. Surprisingly, the final blow that truly cemented this monopoly wasn't a corporate takeover at all. It was an environmental regulation. In 2017, the government mandated a massive industry-wide shift from traditional oil-based paints to water-based paints to cut down on toxic emissions and smog. While this was a massive win for the environment, it acted as an immediate death sentence for smaller independent container factories. Switching over to water-based paints requires massive, expensive factory upgrades, including entirely new climate-controlled drying systems. The smaller private builders simply could not afford that massive upfront investment and went completely bankrupt. The big three, with easy access to capital and loans, upgraded their facilities overnight and effortlessly absorbed all the remaining market share. The new environmental rules effectively cleared the entire field for them, but thinking of CIMC as just a company that makes steel boxes is a massive mistake. They have quietly evolved into a global infrastructure superpower. Next time you walk through an airport passenger boarding bridge in San Francisco, Paris, or Hong Kong, take a look around. There's a massive chance that entire tunnel system was designed and manufactured by a subsidiary of CIMC. They are one of the single largest suppliers of airport logistics equipment on Earth. They have also taken over modular construction. When cities need massive quarantine centers or emergency housing built in a matter of weeks, CIMC delivers thousands of modular steel rooms completely pre-fitted with working plumbing and electricity, ready to stack like blocks. They own iconic Western brands like Ziegler, the major German fire truck manufacturer, and they are currently building massive offshore oil rigs. As global manufacturing slowly begins to shift to other rising economies like Vietnam or India, it seems logical that container production would follow the factories. If you are manufacturing shoes or electronics in Hanoi, it makes perfect sense to build the shipping box right there too. Vietnam has a rapidly growing steel sector and booming exports, but they run into one massive, unbreakable wall: sheer scale. A brand new, state-of-the-art factory in a developing manufacturing hub might successfully turn out 100,000 containers a year. That sounds incredibly impressive. Until you look at the actual scoreboard, CIMC alone routinely pumps out millions of units annually. The story of how these three companies took over the physical shape of modern globalization wasn't written through a sudden, hostile takeover. It was won through a 40-year game of extreme industrial patience.